Welcome everyone to the latest I4CP Next Practices weekly call. We have these calls every Thursday at this time from 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. We go for a full hour. If you're new to this call, it's a particular welcome for you. We've got a lot of returning names and faces that I'm seeing as well, so welcome back. We are I4CP, the Institute for Corporate Productivity. If you're not familiar with us, we're a human capital research firm. We discover the people practices that truly drive high performance in all of our organizations. By high performance, we mean organizations that excel in four main areas: revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. And when we do our surveys, when we do our research, our quantitative studies, we're able to tease out those HR practices, human capital practices, that the upper quartile, those high-performing companies, do more often than their low-performing counterparts, and then really tease those out and discuss the ramifications of that in all of our reports and other material that we provide. We are a member-based organization. You see here just a small sampling of our broad member base. They really span across all market verticals, industries, from technology to healthcare to finance, manufacturing, and many more. Also different size organizations. So you see some of the larger names there like Ford and Microsoft, Amazon, Accenture, but then also some smaller organizations. We've got a growing cadre of unicorns and startups in membership as well. If you're with a member company, special welcome to you today. Glad to have you with us. If you're not with a member organization but would like to learn more, just reach out to myself, Zeta, Janelle, anyone on the call today, or go to our website. We've got, of course, a contact form there, and we'd be happy to talk with you. My name is Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and today my co-host is Janelle Buati, one of our membership directors. So welcome, Janelle.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
Good to have you with us, and we're going to get to our special guests in just a moment. But first, I want to just note again that we have these Next Practices weekly calls every Thursday at the same time. You'll see coming up next week, we've got a guest from Wells Fargo. We'll be focusing on talent acquisition at that organization. Then on the 10th, I'll be joined by my colleague, Judy Elbers. We'll be taking a look again at one of the hot topics of the year, artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI. We've come out with a new toolkit for our members, and we're going to share a little bit about what that provides and actually sort of pull back the curtain a little and share some of that content with this broader audience. We also do a couple of these sessions every quarter, every few months, for our friends in Europe and APAC at times that are a little bit easier for them to attend. We did one recently with Europe, Middle East, and Africa time zone audience focused on our latest study, the productivity predicament. We'll be doing that again for the APAC audience on August 16th. Wanted to go back and just sort of note this new study, the productivity predicament, really looked at the fact that, as you see that pendulum looking thing there on the cover of the report, this is a new report, just came out, and the reason for the pendulum metaphor, we found in just talking with our member organizations and reading headlines, of course, over the past several months, more and more organizations sort of pivoting back to a focus on productivity and accountability going forward, while not wanting to give up the gains that we've seen at organizations when it comes to things like empathy and flexibility. And so we're calling this sort of the productivity predicament. How do you balance these two things, not giving up the gains that we've seen in wellness and flexibility and empathy over the past several years, but needing to pivot back maybe and focusing on accountability and productivity more. So we have a brief available that is available out on our website, open to the public, and of course, a full report available for our members. All right, with that, I'm going to turn things over to Janelle to introduce our two guests today and sort of lead the facilitation of this conversation.
Great, thanks so much, Tom, and good now, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Tom said, I'm Janelle Buati. I'm a membership director here at I4CP, and I have the pleasure of working alongside a community of great HR leaders. And today we're joined by two powerhouses from Hewlett Packard Enterprises. So we're going to dive into their culture and explore the ways they bring their culture to life to the HPE experience. So without further ado, let me introduce our two guests. Samanntha Dubridge, she is our Vice President of Benefits, Culture, and People Experience at HPE. And Cile Lucas, the Global Culture and Team Member Experience Lead at HPE. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. So let's start off with some introductions. I know both of you have had some great careers and a journey at HPE and HP, I'm sorry. So if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your career journey.
Happy to. So as you said, right now I'm the global head of benefits, culture, and people experience. And for us, people experience is a kind of a host of different activities. It includes our labor and employee relations, our HR service centers, our global mobility team, things like that. And over time, I've had the pleasure of working in a lot of different what we call centers of excellence. So I spent a fair amount of time in the benefits and mobility and compensation, so sort of the total reward space. And then the last several years, it started expanding out and getting opportunities to work more directly in culture. And now even more recently into some of the other employee experience areas outside of culture. So it's been a great opportunity for me throughout several years now, originally at HP, and then when we separated with HP Inc., part of HPE for the last almost 7 years. So, Cile?
That's fantastic. Thank you. And Cile?
So Cile Lucas, I'm based out of the Atlanta area. I've been with HPE for 25 years this year, so it's been a great journey. I started within the sales organization, moved into HR, went back to what is now called sales operations. At one point, it was a services organization. So I was a consultant for many years, traveling to customer sites and delivering HP services at the time. And then I moved into kind of an HR shadow role within sales operations and led all of the culture and employee experience initiatives for sales operations, which led me into the role that I have today.
I love that. Such a variety of experiences and skills that you both bring to the table. So before we dive into the culture, I do wonder if you could just talk a little bit about who HPE is, your organization size, to give us some context.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do so. And I want to do a special shout out because as I was looking at the chat as we were waiting to get started, I see some of my colleagues or our colleagues from HPE on the line. So glad to see them join, as well as a lot of people all the way across the country. And I think I even saw someone in Europe. So glad to have everybody joining us today. HPE has been, it's sort of an old company and a new company. Like I said, we had gone through a period of time where we were known as Hewlett Packard Company and had been around for over 75 years. And then we did a separation across a few of our businesses. And Hewlett Packard Enterprise is really focused more on the B2B operations that were part of HP Co. And so we've got the networking, we've got the AI and cloud components, storage, et cetera. So we did start officially as a company in 2015. We've got about 60,000 team members globally, and you can see some of the other stats for us. But a couple of things that I'm especially proud of is, the last couple of years being on Fortune's 100 Best Employers list. We've won some amazing awards specifically in the culture space, in DE&I, which I think are very closely connected components. And then also we're sort of known for our innovation. So the number of patents we've had since we began as a company in 2015, I think is pretty impressive. So we're located now in terms of headquarters in Houston, and that's where I am today, but I'm normally actually out of our California office. So welcome to the California folks that I saw joining the call as well. And that's a little bit about us.
Thank you. That gives us context as we dive into this conversation. So
Yeah.
I know the organization has gone through this culture shift or transformation of sorts, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that culture journey at HPE? And what does that culture blueprint look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Samantha mentioned, when we were part of HP Co., HP has been around since 1939. And I think that when you think about our culture, it really started with our original founders, Bill and Dave. They were very much attuned to how important it was to keep people involved in not just the people component of what was happening at the company, but the business, and having them include their voice in everything that happened within the organization. So they kind of led the way in what has transpired into the culture at HPE. When we did separate, we thought about, how do we shift into a company and stand up on our own? And the way that we did that, we took the voice of thousands of people. So it wasn't our executives sitting in a room with a consulting firm saying, these are the words, we're going to put them on some slides and we're going to share them with everybody. We have focus groups. We had surveys that we did. We had one-on-one interviews with thousands of people. And what we did is we took the words that were important to them and things that we were already doing and things that we felt made us special. And we designed what we called the culture blueprint, which is what you see here. So the guiding principles behind building the blueprint were favors the bold, so with that lean towards innovation. As you know, Bill and Dave were pioneers. They established Silicon Valley, so there's a lot of pride in that. Embracing the discomfort, believing in the art of what's possible, and being one team. So it takes all of us to drive towards delivering our business and culture priorities, and not just, one group or one person. So those were kind of our guiding principles and what you see built out here on this slide. So when we dive a little bit deeper, our marching orders are really advancing the way people live and work. That's kind of our mission statement. And as we look into that, if you could go back to the previous slide, as you look into that, we have 4 key beliefs: accelerating what's next, believing in bold moves, believing in the power of yes, we can, and being a force for good. So under each of those, we have 3 key behaviors, all about, thinking about the customer, moving fast, making decisions, being committed to what we've decided, being innovative, being curious, pushing status quo, always thinking about how to partner effectively and thinking about the collective goal and not just your own personal priorities. And then, of course, wrapping that up with inclusion and serving our communities. And then down at the bottom, you'll see what we call our 4 E's. So this is how we lead at HPE. We call these our elements of leadership. They are engage, empower, evolve, and execute. And we focus a lot on these throughout the year with our people leaders and also our individual contributors. But what we found when we built the blueprint was, it's a lot, right? You have 4 beliefs, you have 12 behaviors. So what we decided a couple of years ago is to really think about how can we bring these to life. So what we decided was to take 3 every year and kind of do a drill down into each of those. So every year we put together campaigns. The first quarter is all about announcing what the 3 behaviors are going to be. And then Q2 through Q4, we have campaigns where we have storytelling, where people share their stories of how they're bringing that particular culture to life. We share with our people leaders what it looks like in action for them, what it looks like in action for our team members. We infuse those particular behaviors into our people programs and our business priorities. And then, of course, we wrap everything with recognition. So the tagline that we like to use in building out our culture campaign is talk it, live it, and recognize it.
I love that. And you said some really interesting things that I want to just call out for a second. One is you stood up on your own as HPE. Like, who are we? I love that you've honored your past. So what we found in our research are those organizations that successfully changed their culture. They weren't rebuilding. They weren't building from scratch. But what they did was they renovated. So they honored their past, what made them great to begin with, and they built on that foundation. And I love that. And I love the simplicity of this. And it's so easy to remember. And you're talking about these values. So let's dig in a little bit more. You told me there's 3 values you focus on per month or per quarter, and then you enable and support your managers to bring this to life.
Yes, so we do 3 per year, 3 each fiscal year. And if we can move to the next slide, there's multiple ways that we bring our behavior to life. You know, we have built the culture priorities into our bold goal setting every year. So there's, when people are setting their goals with their people leaders, and when our executives are also setting their goals for their organization, there's also a culture component to that. We also have a tailored approach where we partner with specific organizations that may have some work that they need to do in their culture space, and we partner with them on what does our culture look like within their specific organization, and how do they need to act or deliver in a specific way to bring that culture to life. So we partnered with a sales organization a couple of years ago. We're in the middle of doing the same exercise with the CTO's office. We've also created a culture ambassador group, which is a grassroots movement, right? So we have just a little over 700 people that are part of that. What we did to start that particular initiative is about 3 years ago, we did a rollout campaign asking people to volunteer themselves, or asking leaders to volunteer people within their organizations that were super passionate about culture and the overall employee experience. And then we looked to see where those people were around the globe. So we've set up culture ambassador groups aligned to our sites. And we also have virtual ambassador groups for people that are teleworkers or people that may not be able to participate in the site activities. And those networks are responsible for taking the culture initiatives that we have, bringing those to life at the local level, but doing it within the flavor of where they are around the world. And that has had a huge impact to our culture overall. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have campaigns that we do every quarter to focus on the 3 behaviors of focus within the fiscal year. We have a couple of key cultural moments. So in April, we have Team Member Appreciation Day, which is probably our biggest employee event that we have at HPE. It's my baby. It's probably my favorite event that we have at HPE. But we set up our sites to have really big events to make our employees feel special and appreciated throughout the day. But I think that the reason that event has been so successful is we really lean on every type of ambassador group around the globe to really drive the excitement to bring that initiative to life. So the culture ambassadors, our resource groups, our people leaders are given toolkits on how to drive the conversation and getting people engaged. We also build toolkits for our site leaders, for our executives. So everyone within the organization kind of has, they're kind of giving instructions, if you will, on how to help enable this big event. And it has grown so much over the last few years. So, in 2020, when COVID happened, we were not able to host the events at the sites. So we did not have anything that year. And then in 2021, our sites were still closed, and we had to move this event to be completely virtual. And that was the first time that we had ever done that. Right. So as you evolve into where we are today, now we have a hybrid approach where we bring in different vendors to host virtual components, but we also have that on-site experience. And there's really a big push, not just with the activities, but really to get people out to the recognition platform, because that's where, you all not only want them to have the activities and the fun events, but also to really drive that culture of appreciation throughout the day. So, I told Samantha one of the fun facts about that is the last 2 years we've had so many recognitions said that we've brought down our vendors recognition platform. So the impact of that day, you know, and I always like to share this, is on a normal day, we typically send about 700 recognitions. For Team Member Appreciation Day, there were 148,000 that were sent. So that's the impact that these types of moments have. And then
I'm
the
sure
other
that,
big, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm sure that vendor likes to tout those big numbers. They probably don't tout the fact that their platform was taken down briefly.
Right? Yes, definitely. And then the other big key culture moment that we have is We Are HPE Day. So Team Member Appreciation Day is all about celebrating our people as individuals. We Are HPE Day, which we just did for the first time this past year, is in November, because that's when we became a standalone company. And that's all about celebrating who we are collectively together as a company. So that's still, you know, kind of in its infancy, and we've learned from last year things to do a little bit differently this year. But that's also set up with a hybrid approach, you know, virtual types of events, on-site events, and really thinking about things that we can do from a culture perspective to really dive into our culture and helping everyone feel connected to that.
We had one question from the chat, if I could jump in with that. This came from Kelly. Good to see you here again, Kelly. She asked, I'm curious about, I think this is from the previous slide, the exercise healthy impatience being one of the behaviors, and what that means for different segments of the organization. Could either of you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I'll give my 2 cents, and Samantha, if you want to jump in as well. So it really aligns to another behavior that we have, which is commit and go, right? So really trying to balance, when do you need to take your time to make decisions, but what are those key moments where you don't have to strive for perfection? You just have to make a decision and go, and then reiterate as you go along. So Samantha, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you summarized it well, but I think as it relates to the different segments, there's a bit of it that's around the commit and go component that you mentioned, Cile. When we think about the sales team, they had a little bit of a unique spin on how they wanted that to be approached. So when Cile worked with that group a couple of years ago, for example, they wanted to take the blueprint and layer in a winning sales culture. So things like exercising healthy impatience, obsessing over the customer, those were the ones that they wanted to really feature and highlight the most, and give examples on how that can work best. And as we go into the tech space, I think it's more about being comfortable with trying things out and testing things, and not holding back on some of that, waiting for you know, to go through so much analysis that it's a little bit of that analysis paralysis. We really wanted to make sure people knew that there's healthy impatience, there's commit and go, and there's also a fail fast, learn and improve, which means you take smart risk in your role. Doesn't mean you just do whatever and you kind of let things fall where they are, but it does mean you take some smart risks. And that's part of what we've been trying to encourage over time, is for people to get a little bit more comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's great to have that as part of your culture, particularly for an organization. Yes, you split off in 2015, but your longer heritage going back so many decades. I think companies with that long of a history often don't have that as part of their culture, and that can lead to atrophy over time and lack of innovation. Janelle, there's probably some things from everything that Cile shared that you might want to follow up on or ask about. If I could just ask one question, this second one that's on the screen here, Cile, tailored approach to key segments. You called out the sales team, I believe, and then I think maybe more recently the CTO, the tech side. I'm just curious, what kinds of things do they tailor, or do you set them up to tailor? Do you have like a quick example you could give of where they tailor or how?
Yeah, so Samantha kind of alluded to some of that. So what they wanted to do is look at the foundational blueprint, because they didn't want to create something that was a sales culture that was in competition to what the overall HPE culture was. So they looked at the key beliefs and the behaviors and really thought about, all right, from a sales organization, which of these are most important to us? And then they thought about, well, if these are important to us, what are the actions that we need to take, and how do we set up our sales team to be able to deliver better to our customers around those particular behaviors. So when we're talking about a tailored approach to those various organizations, it's really looking at that organization and what their priorities are, what their business priorities are, and overlaying that with various components of the culture blueprint that can help them deliver on those priorities.
And I think, I mean, you were sort of going in this direction, but I think the other thing that was really powerful as we've been working through these, Cile actually does like individual interviews with the leadership of those groups to find out more about what pieces of the blueprint do they feel like they're really exhibiting today, and what are the ones where they're a little more aspirational and they might want to highlight them a little bit more, maybe give a few more examples. And then one of the things that we're really working hard on is that fail fast, learn and improve it. That's a tough one for a group of people that tend to be more perfectionist types. So we've been really trying to help people get comfortable with that one in particular. And so I think each organization is in a little bit of a different space as we work with them, and even organizationally, we start to make more progress in some, and then we've got to build up in others. And Tom, to your point, we have been around for a long time, and so making sure that everyone sort of sees the things that they experience on the day-to-day in the culture, but also the things that they can be aspirational about and what they can expect from others, I think is another piece of what's important about the culture.
Yeah.
I love this. Thank you so much. And Cile, there's some comments in the chat. I told you I wouldn't look at it, but I did. Everyone's really loving the talk it, live it, recognize it. Can you just dig into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so I have to give a big nod to our communications team because this was something that they came up with on, when we're thinking about, and this wasn't just specific to culture, this was like all of the initiatives within the organization, right? When you're rolling something out to our employees and our people leaders, we follow that know, feel, do model. But as you follow up with that, you've got to really think about, one, they've got to understand what it is, right? So that's all about talking about it, making sure that people understand, when I'm talking about culture specifically, what those behaviors look like in action for our individual contributors, what it looks like in action for our people leaders, providing discussion points for our people leaders to have robust conversations specific about our culture with their teams. So everybody has the same message within their organization, but the flavor of that can be localized, right? Specific to your audience, but they're all basically providing the same message. And then living it is, now that we've talked about it, you understand what it is, right? So now it's up to all of us to live that every day, and we expect our people leaders to walk the walk, right? They should be leading by example. But I think the other thing that's really important is really focusing on our ambassador group. So people that are part of this culture ambassador group, our Culture Catalyst Network, our resource groups, our wellness ambassadors, our volunteer ambassadors, all of those people as well. They may not be people leaders, but we all lead, right, within our space. And it's up to us to also lead by example. So, you could be just at work, not thinking about what you're doing, but someone could be watching how you behave and the message that you share, and you're providing an example of somebody. And then we wrap that up with, when you see somebody living our behaviors and bringing those to life, you've got to recognize it, because what gets recognized gets repeated, right? And that's what really drives a culture.
I love this on so many levels. Talk it, live it, recognize it. So easy to remember and so impactful. So I want to circle back for just a second, because I know when we first talked, Cile, and we're talking about recognition, this is your baby. I know this is where you get really excited. Let's spend another moment there. So you're recognizing the values and when the right behaviors are brought to life in your culture, and that's how you create that consistent experience. But I know you also pinpointed moments within just the human journey of when do we recognize our employees? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so several years ago, we had a huge initiative called Project X, which was all about the employee experience at HPE. And again, that was going out to the masses. There were focus groups done. There was a survey that went out to, I think, around 30,000 employees. There were individual interviews. So again, you know, it's important to us to have that collective voice when we're trying to determine how to deliver something specific to our culture. But what we found in all of that data gathering were it's not only important to recognize and celebrate our accomplishments at the company, but it's also important to celebrate all those meaningful moments also in our personal lives, right? And I know Aisha Washington, our Chief Diversity Officer, I saw her name pop up. So hi, Aisha. But I know that she'll appreciate this. You know, we really want to make it where people can bring their whole selves to work, right? And we want to celebrate that. So what we found was that it was important to our employees to have within our recognition platform, not only opportunities and e-cards to recognize our business achievements, but also to celebrate personal moments. So we created e-cards for life events. So things like, you know, having a baby, adopting a baby, getting married, buying a house, getting certified in something, graduating. And we got the different types of experiences from our employees and what was most important to them. And then we partnered with our global wellness team, especially around the time of COVID, to really think about, well, we probably need to have some motivational e-cards, right? Because there was, you know, there was a lot of stress around 2020, right, around the globe. And our employees were struggling around that time. So we partnered very heavily with the global wellness team and developed what we call motivational e-cards. So those are kind of like pick me up type of messages. So if you see somebody that's struggling, you can send an e-card to them. And then we also have holidays and key events. So when the big holidays for like the RGs have Black History Month or Women's Day, Men's Day, all of those big events with our RG signature events, we make sure we have e-cards for those. We have the holiday e-cards that are specific to all the major holidays that happen that our employees celebrate around the world. And then, you know, if there's other types of holiday or key events that are important to our employees and they bring those up, we add e-cards for those as well. So we really want to think about the whole experience and how we can celebrate and show appreciation for our employees' full selves and not just the business component.
I love that. And so impactful. So a couple of years ago, I'll share a personal story. I lost one of my dogs. He passed away unexpectedly, but what the organization did for me was they sent me gifts to my house, and I got a lot of e-cards through that moment, and that really helped with my emotional well-being. And I know well-being plays a huge part in your HPE experience. And Samantha, I think you actually talked with one of my good friends, Liz Pavese, at another conference about this. Let's dive into how well-being plays a part in your HPE experience.
Yeah, that's great. So we think about wellness across kind of 4 pillars or 4 categories. Physical health is the one that we probably focused on the longest in terms of the different activities that we've had with team members. So we have things like our Global Wellness Challenge, which is basically like an exercise or a step challenge that we do a couple times a year. Usually it's just for team members, but we've piloted it a few times where we've had it with entire families and things like that. And so that's a very well established, very sort of traditional thing. People really look forward to that year over year. Financial well-being has been one that we, up until 2-3 years ago, we really focused specific to each country. And so each country had a very different feel for financial well-being, but we've recently layered in more of a global component to it because there are certain things like planning your budget, things like that, that can be globally applicable. So we've tried to kind of do a little bit more in that space. And that's become one that's been more interesting, I would say, especially over the last year as people are looking at high inflation rates in some of the countries and they're trying to kind of figure out how they deal with that and plan for their future. The mental and emotional health one has been one that we've focused on for quite a long time. We have sort of the basic things that you would think about around EAP and the mental health programs across the globe. We also have things like Headspace. We do certain campaigns every year that focus on different components of stress management, how to gain support, sort of the "Are you okay" type of approach that we've done a few times as well. We also have a podcast that we do, and it's actually open to everyone. It's on Apple and Spotify and other things, called Straight Talk for Real Life. So we hit on a variety of topics there for the broader community. And then the most recent pillar that we added 2 years ago is community well-being. And we started it actually during kind of more of the COVID environment and wanting people to think more about how they can stay connected to people. And then over time, it's really grown. We engage with a lot of the other ambassador groups that Cile talked about. And part of what I'm really loving about the different ambassador groups at this point and the resource groups is they all kind of look at each other and take ideas from each other. And in some cases, certain groups feel like, oh, this other group is doing this and this really successfully. How can we learn from that? So we're building more of a volunteer community across a variety of topics, and they can all kind of partner together.
This is great that you focus on so many different key pillars of what we call holistic well-being. And I see the word holistic support here at the top of this slide as well. So you obviously take the same approach. I just wanted to draw attention for those that maybe are a little less familiar with I4CP. We did a major study on holistic well-being led by my colleague, Carol Morrison, a little while ago, but it's evergreen topic really. And so the findings are still very relevant today. Zeta kindly put the link to that. It is publicly available. Most research that we do, of course, is reserved for our member organizations, but that particular one, because it's been so important and grown so much over the past few years with the pandemic and everything else that's been going on, we wanted to make that one available, the report more broadly. And we too, saw an uptick big time over the past several years. We focused on it a lot in this call series on mental and emotional health. And then more recently, more and more companies we're finding focusing on financial well-being. I think about a year ago, there was great fears about a looming recession. Seems like we've held that off a little bit, but it might still be coming. But it gave organizations a sort of a reason, a focal point to maybe focus a bit more on financial well-being, their educational resources, other things that they can provide. So great to see that you're doing that as well.
Thanks, Tom. And I think if we move off of the wellness piece for a moment and just go back to one of the other topics that Cile mentioned, we've been doing some things related to how do we think about culture and helping people really practice certain behaviors. And so innovation is a key piece for us, obviously being a technology company. If we can go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about a contest that we created just about 3 years ago where it's called Innovation Quest. Anyone across the company, so not just the engineering group or the technologists, can apply to this, but it goes across a multitude of categories. The first year, we had 6 categories, and then we went the second year and we focused more on obsessing over the customer, and we said it has to meet some sort of customer challenge. And so the winning ideas in that space were related to that. This year, we are wrapping up the third innovation quest, and we focused on, again, 2 customer challenges, but also something called the wild card category, and that meant you could come up with anything. And we saw a lot of people coming forward with ideas in that space. It's kind of exciting to see because the places that we see the innovation coming forward has been oftentimes in sales and services, actually. So the engineering group, I think there's lots of different ways that they bring their technology ideas forward. I think this has been a way for maybe some of the other teams to feel like they have opportunities to bring their concepts forward. So we've had about 1,600 ideas in the last 3 years. Every year, it's very hard. We have our executive council that picks the winners. It's very hard to pick the winners. This year we made it even harder because we said you can only pick one for the winning idea, and the other ones we'll share out with the broader leadership team, and maybe they can take them on individually within their business units. But we're picking just one winner this time, and so really excited to see that. And I also think just from an HR perspective, it's been fun for us to do something that we feel like is very directly supporting the business and that the leadership gets really excited by. So this has been one. And then the next page is a little bit of a different play on innovation. And it was thinking about us as an organization and the fact that we have been around for a long time. And in some cases, we've got processes that are a little bit much for people, and that we haven't really focused on some of our internal processes. It can be a little bit hard for people to get certain things done. And so we asked all of our team members to come forward and tell us, what is it that you would want to fix? Is there a process or concept that you would want to fix? Something that you think we're making progress on, but you'd love to see us spend more attention on it and really accelerate it? Or are we doing something today that we shouldn't even be doing? Like, we're just spinning wheels, wasting time, like, let's get rid of it. So those are the three categories: fix it, accelerate it, or eliminate it. We had over 650 entries. We got down to 22 finalists, and then we had, actually, we're only supposed to have 3 winners, but we just have such a hard time deciding. We ended up with 4 that year. So this is one that we do typically like every other year or so, but it allows us to help people think about how we can be better as a company and improve what we're doing and make things easier for all of us. So that was another one that we've put into place. And I think, again, it's more about giving your team an opportunity to look at things fresh. I did a version of this with my own organization, and I called it a mini Escape the Red Tape. And I've also done a mini quest within my own team, because sometimes there are things within our own groups that take people a lot of time and effort, or they have certain ideas and maybe they're not the people that typically do strategy. So we were trying to get, everybody in the group to get involved, and then also everybody to give us fresh thoughts on what are some things that we might be able to do differently within our teams. And those have been kind of popular as well, but certainly very small scale in comparison to what we're doing across the organization.
I see one question in the chat from Marlene, which I think is based on this one, Escape the Red Tape, asking, can you share how you reached out? Is it just in emails to employees or some other activities?
Yeah, we do a pretty big combination of things on these campaigns. So there are emails. We have a internal portal page where we call it a takeover page, and typically these types of events have it where this is the primary thing and you can't get to the rest of the portal until you click through this page. So it sort of covers up the rest of the website normally. So we've done things like that with it. Some of the messages actually come from Antonio, which always helps as well, or Alan May, our Chief People Officer. And then we also, we use Slack. So we put things out on Slack. We leverage the ambassador groups that we mentioned for some of these different things. And then we ask each of our most senior leaders, so all of our business leaders, to have this as a topic in their quarterly meetings or in their staff meetings and things like that. Some of them really are very competitive, and so they really want to see their team coming forward with a lot of ideas, and so they encourage people really strongly to do that. And I think that's another fantastic way to get people engaged. And then the final thing that we do is that I didn't really mention is all of these ideas that win, they're centrally funded, and so for some groups that's a really big deal, that they can sort of take a chance on a new idea or do something a little bit differently. Again, with Escape the Red Tape, it's maybe even accelerating certain ideas that are going to take a little bit longer typically. So that central funding also helps get some of the people leaders more excited about, hey, let's make sure that our teams are getting engaged. And they've seen over time now how that's worked out and some of the successes that those groups have had.
It's great that you focus on this. Over the years, I've read some case studies of a few other organizations that have. I think maybe PepsiCo is one that has done this. But I think too often organizations, the natural tendency is to add processes, add new things on top, instead of looking at things to, like you say here, accelerate, or in particular, fix or eliminate. Doing so can really reduce burnout. It can improve culture. It can improve productivity at the end of the day. But it takes some real focus to do that kind of review, and in this case, crowdsource what the ideas might be from everyone. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, I will tell you, to your point about crowdsourcing and the amount of review, when Cile and her team are running these contests, they build a network of judges that's 100 to even 200, I think, one year, because we've got to have judging that can take people through different rounds. And we've got to have different types of expertise in order to evaluate whether the concepts are workable concepts or not. So we need, some of the sales team, we need different types of engineers, we need different types of process people. In escape the red type, the finance team is really important. So there's a lot of different people that get involved. It's a huge undertaking to do these types of contests if you really want to come up with things that are going to move the needle for the company. So they're fantastic, but they are an awful lot of work.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I'd like to add is in how we promote these is we also lean very heavily on our HR organization. So for all of the programs that we run, we create what I call field ready slides. It could be, a packet of 2 or 3 slides, or it could be just a 1-page poster that they could then take into the businesses that they support. And talk through what it is and get people excited about it and kind of share how people can get engaged. So we have an HR forum that happens once a month where all the COE leads can come in and share out with the HR community things that are happening and prep them to go talk about that within their organizations.
I love that. And it's so hard to get the communication and get the word out. And I love this play on the naming convention, right? Your innovation quest had the Shark Tank style going to it. And then obviously here with the escape the red tape, the escape the room. Now, I believe in our conversations before, you've talked about specifically with Innovation Quest, there was some training, some 6 to 12-week training that the finalists went through to develop that sales pitch, to develop an MVP, to do that final pitch. Is that accurate?
That's right. They get some amount of training when they reach the finalist level, and then the winners actually get a more in-depth training because we've had winners from VP level down to like entry-level intermediate people who are brand new to the company, brand new to the organization, don't understand budgeting, don't understand how to get things done at the company, but have fantastic ideas. And so it's been really gratifying to see the ideas that can come through across any person within the company, but they all need different types of support. So there is a process that we help them with and a training. And that's sort of one of the other things that they win is this sort of specialized development. They get a lot of visibility with senior leaders. And again, if you're a more junior person, you're not used to talking to the lead of your business, we want people to feel comfortable with that, be ready for those types of conversations and feel good and excited about them versus sort of nervous. So we do give them a lot of support when they've won.
I love that. That's such a great way to bring people into the organization, have them feel invested, part of something bigger, and drive innovation forward. Such amazing work from you two. So you defined your culture blueprint. We understand the values, you're bringing it to life. You're enabling your team to put their local flavor on it. So let's kind of go back into culture and your key focus areas. And I think this was where I was most impressed was you're very intentional on what HR is focusing on. And then how you're sustaining that culture throughout the entire year and beyond. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can start and Cile, feel free to jump in, but like we've been talking about, culture and innovation are key pieces for us. I think a real hot topic for us and probably most of the people on this session today, hybrid work, and Cile's been leading that effort as well. We see that as a very key component to our culture. And there's a piece of me that kind of chuckles about this because I've been at the company for a long time. We've always had hybrid work. We've always had this flexibility to kind of be at home at some times and be in the office at other times. But there was something about COVID that sort of changed the dynamic when people were really, except manufacturing, were truly at home. And now we're trying to find the right balance point for some of those things. So we have a hybrid strategy there. And the team norms future of work piece really does tie into hybrid, because part of what we did is we had all of our people leaders get together with their teams and come up with what we were calling team norms. So they could talk about how did they want to work together in a hybrid environment. How did they want to bring inclusion to bear within their own groups. There was a wellness component and then an execution component, which was more about, given the time of year that we were doing it in our fiscal calendar, it was about midway through the year. So we said, let's have each of the teams pause for a minute, talk about if they're working effectively together or not, and how they can improve their efficiency and effectiveness. So we built team norms around a couple of those different components. And then, as we just talked about a minute ago, the team member well-being. But Cile, things that you want to add to that, because you've been really leading a lot of these pieces.
Yeah, I think team norms specifically, we, as Samantha mentioned, we had our people leaders go through this this process with their teams to really think about, under those 4 key areas: engagement, inclusion, execution, and well-being. Like, what does that mean for them within their organization, right? And then they submitted their top 2 or 3 ideas to us as the group that was leading this work. And then we had an analytics team kind of go through it was a lot of data, go through all the data that was submitted and kind of roll up the key themes that we were seeing across the globe from all of our leaders. So now we're right in the middle of rolling that out and sharing that out on our insider portal. And we're on Tuesdays, we're calling it Team Norms Tuesdays. Because a lot of the people leaders were saying, it'd be great to hear what other leaders submitted from their teams, because it could be something that we could leverage, right? So, I think one thing that's really important about the things that we do and that I love is not only do we gather this data, but really sharing it out too. Because that to me is kind of the wrapper of when you find out something that's important and impactful for our people, is be able to share out with others so that they can leverage that and kind of bring that to life within their own teams. The hybrid work initiative, that's been a huge organization. So looking across the landscape to see, things that need to change from a systems perspective, from a talent perspective, are there any impacts to country policies? We've now implemented a new hybrid work policy with guidance of 2 to 3 days in the office. We're updating our teleworker policies, like our global policy, and then specific ones for specific countries that need different guidance. So we're looking at those types of things. We're also looking at things like offer letters and recruiting and what needs to be updated from that perspective. So everything that is changing from a hybrid work perspective within HPE, all of those changes are taking place across the entire landscape. So it's been a huge initiative. It's been a lot of work. We're still right in the middle of it. And hopefully we'll have something good to share with you here pretty soon once we get all that rolled out and the waves are completed with all the different countries. But we're moving forward with that. And there's been a lot of work and a lot of people doing some great things within that space. And then team member well-being. I know Samantha did a deep dive on this a little bit earlier. But one thing that she didn't mention that I love is there's an initiative called Mystery Coffee. And this is where you can set up a profile of things that you have, where you're located, things that you're interested in. And then there's some algorithm that runs in the back end that matches you up. It's kind of like speed dating, kind of matches you up with somebody else that you may have similar interests with. And it sends an email to both of you. And then it puts the onus on you to set up time to meet and network. So it's a great networking tool. And it's something that I've had 4 or 5 interactions already, and I've had continued conversations with the people that I've met. So that's been a really, really great tool. And I don't know, Samantha, if there's anything specific that you want to share out with Mystery Coffee, but I thought it was important to call that one out too.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that one is, that's a vendor. And so that's their name. So you can look them up and find out a little bit more about them. But that's been very, very popular with people. And you can kind of set up how often you want to have these engagements with different people. But, for us, we typically do them for like a 30-minute window. But they're a lot of fun, and they're a great way to build community within the organization.
Yeah.
Well, this was fantastic. And I know I'm looking at time. I'm going to pass it to Tom. Is there any final questions that we want to end with?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I guess there's a quick one here just on what you just mentioned, the mystery coffee. Elise is asking, what is the vendor used for that, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
They're called Mystery Coffee.
They're just called mystery coffee. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. And more broadly, thank you so much. Thanks, Janelle, for leading the facilitation today. But thank you, Cile and Samantha, for all that you shared. It was great content, great practices, great and interesting things that even go beyond, I think, what some of our research has found are best and next practices at organizations. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to conclude by noting that these calls, our next practices weekly calls, are now available with recertification credit hours with both HRCI and SHRM. So if you're an HR professional needing to get those credit hours for your research, you can jot down the program ID here for HRCI or the activity ID for SHRM. And also, I'll note that we have an annual conference at I4CP held each year in March. It's open for registration now at i4cp.com/conference. This upcoming one in 2024 will once again be in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Princess Fairmont, March 25th through the 28th. We haven't yet started announcing any of the speakers for the event, but we'll start rolling that out pretty soon. It's a great event. Hundreds of HR leaders gather. We don't have a trade show, so there's no vendors or consultants present, but you'll learn a lot from your peers, and so we'd encourage you to check that out. And with that, I'm going to close things out. Thanks again, Janelle. Thanks, Cile. Thanks, Samantha, and thanks, Zeta. Another great event. Look forward to seeing everyone again next week at the same time, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Until then, have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.